Pico, given what you call home and all of the traveling you do, tell us a bit more about how you discern kind of identity and place in the world, given all that mobility.
Well, I was lucky because I was born to Indian parents in England, and then my parents moved to California when I was 7. So from a very early age, I felt I couldn't quite identify myself as Indian or American or British, but a part of me was in all those places. So I think even then, I was thinking of identity as a collage. And I was thinking that I was lucky to be apart from, but a part of all those places, and not imprisoned within any one of them. But it was wonderful to feel the fluidity and to feel I could almost take on or slough off each of those identities according to what was most convenient. I think for so many people now, home couldn't be reduced to any single location, but would have to be not just inside me, but in the ever-shifting combination of all the places that were making me up. I think it's a fortunate thing not to be stuck in an identity, because when I think of my grandparents, they really had no options. If they were asked who they were, what their tribe was, what their religion, what their nationality was, they only had one answer to give, and probably felt that they were imprisoned within that answer for life, and imprisoned within a fixed sense of who their friends and enemies were. So I think there are clearly challenges and disadvantages to having this fluid sense of home, but I'm something of an optimist. So I'm a lifelong foreigner wherever I am, and that makes it easy to be foreign wherever I am. I think I realized at some early stage in my life that if somebody asked, where do you come from? I didn't have a good answer. I would give a different answer according to who was asking, and really it didn't mean anything to me. But if somebody asked, where are you going? That seemed the most important question. I began to think something like me is almost more rooted in the future than in the past. And if it's true for me, I think it's much truer of the kids nowadays, who are much more international and much more omnidirectional than I am, and for whom the question of where do you come from is much more complicated, but who probably do have a strong sense of where they want to go and what they want to do. And I think it's wonderful to be liberated by that.
What does that mean as far as that transience in the creation of a global mindset of being able to really understand the place of the entire world, if you will?
Well, I think if you don't have a sense of we, you don't have a sense of they. Okay. And so the very notion of us versus them is in some regards exploded. I think the mixing and overlap of cultures is no longer something we can resist. It's something we have to embrace because it's the way of the new century. I do think there's a possibility if we identify ourselves by our passions more than our passports, I think there's a room for stepping beyond the enmities of our grandparents' generation.
So what do you think the purpose of identity is?
I think we'll always need identity. And some people ask, will all divisions end if everybody is mixed and hybrid? And I suspect if they begin to end, we'll create new divisions. I think there's something in us that seems to need them. So if we're not stigmatizing people on the basis of nationalities, we may be on the basis of their loving heavy metal while we love country and western, or they being Yankees fans when we're Dodger fans, or Bayern Munich instead of AC Milan, or whatever it is.
What are you finding in terms of people's ability to really understand other cultures as opposed to just the belief that they know?
Yes, so I've been traveling almost non-stop for 40 years now. And my experience is that the world isn't a small place. And in fact, sometimes the differences and distances between us are getting greater than ever before because, as you said, of the illusion of knowledge and of familiarity and of closeness. And they used to say 100 years ago that England and the US were two cultures divided by a common language. And I think we're now almost 200 cultures divided by a common cultural language.
Do you ever worry that with that globalization there ever becomes a homogenization of everyone and the spice of the world gets diminished?
I've never felt that cultures are beginning to look similar to each other. And I think it's akin to the fact, or akin to the way in which most of the kids of the world are probably wearing blue jeans and T-shirts. But if you have an Indonesian, a Norwegian, and a Bolivian kid in this room, I think they'll be as different as if they were wearing indigenous clothing.
So it's been interesting with this new world of this mobility and this constantly on and being able to get access to information from all parts of the globe. Tell me more about the art of stillness.
Well, I think what you were describing, I would say, is the art of overload. And the art of stillness is just a feeble attempt to respond to the sense that we're all getting dizzy. And we have this sense that we're living at the speed of light rather than that of life. In other words, we're living at a pace determined by machines, and perhaps humans were never built with a system to live at a machine pace. I was just finding out there's this great new field with a wonderful title, interruption science. And researchers in it have found that it takes the average human being 25 minutes to recover from a phone call. And yet the average human being in a place like where we're sitting gets a phone call every 11 minutes. So we're never caught up. I think luxury is a function of scarcity. We most prize what we have least. And I remember as a little kid, I thought the great luxury is to have a lot of space, a big house or a huge car. Now I think very quickly it's become to have a lot of time. People's eyes now light up when I talk about going nowhere or offline, because that seems to become the big luxury. Just having a little open space in our calendar is harder and harder to find, and we're more and more desperate for it, I think. I mean, I think more and more of us have the sensation that we have more and more time-saving devices, but less and less time. More and more information, but less and less sense of how to process it or sift through it. More and more contact sometimes with people on the other side of the world, and in the process, less and less with ourselves. And I think we're all aware that we're getting kind of swept along on this accelerating roller coaster that we never quite asked to get on, but now we don't know how to get off. And one of the things that's most impressed me on my travels is that the people who seem wisest about unplugging and the limits of technology are actually the people who've created those technologies. And I think what the people at the heart of technology know is that technology has given us everything except a sense of how to make the wisest use of technology, in the same way as cars can't teach us how to drive yet, let alone where to go. And that the information revolution came without a manual. And I think what I sometimes think is it's a safe bet in the next 10 years, our devices are only going to accelerate and proliferate. So if we're feeling dizzy now, we will be 100 times more dizzy by the year 2025. And the machines are not going to tell us to go offline. We have to take conscious measures ourselves. And I've noticed, I think most people I know are already doing that. They'll go for a long run every morning, or they'll practice yoga or meditation, or they'll cook quietly when they come back from the office, or they'll try to take long hikes on the weekend, or they'll go to retreat houses every 3 months, as I do. But if you don't do that, I think you get lost in the swirl and begin to lose all perspective. I think when we unplug, first we find out what our passions are, which we lose sight of, and then we can actually pursue them. And I think when we pursue our passions is when we're least thinking about our devices. My prejudice is that nearly all of us are happiest when we're completely absorbed in something. In other words, when we forget what the time is, and we lose ourselves in a piece of music, or a movie, or a deep conversation with a friend, or an intimate encounter with someone we love.